Darkcast Network, bringing our indie podcasts out of the shadows. This week's case took place in Inverness, which is in the north of Scotland, and it's about the mysterious disappearance of Renee MacRae and her 3-year-old son Andrew. And this is Scotland's longest-running missing persons investigation. Inverness is the northernmost city in the United Kingdom and has an approximate population of over 46,800 people. It once was a county town for Inverness-shire, but nowadays it's a thriving city that has expanded into the surrounding countryside and farmland, and it's the perfect central location for exploring the Highlands. You all have probably heard of the Loch Ness Monster, and Inverness is about a 25-minute drive away from Loch Ness. When Renee and Andrew went missing, the population in Inverness was approximately 40,000, so still quite a large population. You're not going to know everybody living there. However, when Renee was born in 1940, Inverness would have been a much smaller town with a population of less than 28,000 people, and it would have been surrounded by farmlands. So Christina, or Renee Catherine MacDonald, was born in February 1940. Renee and her older sister Morag grew up in a council house in Bewley, which is 13 miles or about 20 kilometres east of Inverness. Morag eventually married and moved with her husband to Kilmarnock, which is about a 3.5-hour drive south of Inverness. Despite the distance between the sisters, they kept in regular contact, calling each other at least once a week, and Renee would regularly visit Morag in Kilmarnock. When Renee was growing up, she worked at a local chemist in town, which she really enjoyed and made lots of friends there. Renee also met her husband Gordon while she was working at the chemist, and in 1966, when Renee was 26, the couple married. Renee's husband Gordon had taken over his father's building business and had made it very lucrative and successful. So with money not being an issue, the couple enjoyed holidaying abroad, with Italy being their favourite holiday spot, until the birth of their son, Gordon, in 1968. Renee's second son, Andrew, was born in 1973. Andrew was apparently a lovable wee boy and was always up to mischief. Renee was said to be a compassionate and caring mother, and her boys were her whole life. Sadly, the marriage wasn't a happy one, and about 5 years into the marriage in 1971, Renee started an affair with William, or Bill McDowell, who was the accountant at her husband's building company and was married with 2 children. The only person Renee confided in about the affair was her best friend, Valerie Steventon. At the beginning of 1976, Renee and Gordon had separated and were heading for divorce, but they had remained good friends, and Gordon continued to provide for Renee and his children financially, going as far as buying a house in Cradle Hall Park in Inverness for Renee and the boys to live in. Gordon was living elsewhere with his secretary, who he would later go on to marry. So both Gordon and Renee seemed quite happy in their lives at this time. Gordon had apparently been aware that Renee was having an affair during their marriage, but he didn't know the identity of the man. That was until Renee and Andrew's disappearance. Now, sometime in the months before Renee and Andrew disappeared, Renee told her friend Valerie that Bill McDowell planned to leave his wife and that he had got a job in the oil industry in Shetland, had found them somewhere to live there, and that her, Bill, and Renee's 2 children were planning on moving there. According to Renee, this move was actually meant to take place the week after Renee and Andrew disappeared. On Friday, the 12th of November 1976, Renee's day started off as normal. She got her son Gordon up and ready for school while feeding and dressing Andrew at the same time. She then dropped her 8-year-old son Gordon off at school before meeting her friend Valerie for a cup of tea and a chat in a local cafe. It was during this chat with Valerie that Renee told her of her intention to spend the weekend with Bill McDowell at his request so he could spend time with Andrew before the move to Shetland. However, Renee said she intended to tell her estranged husband that she would be visiting her sister Morag in Kilmarnock for the weekend. Now, you might have picked up on the fact I said that Bill McDowell had requested to spend time with the 3-year-old Andrew. Well, that was because Andrew was in fact Bill McDowell's son and not Renee's estranged husband Gordon's child. Renee's estranged husband didn't know this fact, although he later said he had suspected it. In fact, nobody but Bill McDowell, Renee and Renee's friend Valerie knew this. Following her chat with Valerie, Renee then spent time packing a suitcase for herself and Andrew for their weekend with Bill McDowell before collecting her son Gordon from school. And then just before 5 p.m, Renee put her small brown antler suitcase and Andrew's silver cross pushchair into the back of her car, made sure her sons were safely secured in the car, and then left her home at Cradle Hall Park. She then drove to her estranged husband's house, who lived not far away, to drop her eldest son Gordon off before waving goodbye and driving away. Renee then turned south onto the A9, which is the main road between Inverness and Perth. However, Renee intended to turn off towards Rannoch, which is a 2-hour and 15-minute drive south of Inverness, where she had arranged to spend the weekend with Bill McDowell. What happened after that, nobody knows for sure. However, about 10 p.m, bus driver Colin McGregor, who was travelling on the A9, stopped as he saw something ablaze in a lay-by on the A9 about 12 miles or 19 kilometres south of Inverness. When the bus driver went to investigate, it was Renee's light blue BMW car that was on fire, and both Renee and Andrew were gone. It was wet, cold, and very dark when the police arrived and found the car charred and empty, except for a large blood stain in the boot, which was later determined to match both Renee and Andrew's blood type. There was no trace of the antler suitcase or Andrew's silver cross pushchair. Initially, it was thought by the police that Renee had just gone away for the weekend and that her car had been stolen and vandalised. Valerie also thought this, and that maybe Renee had just decided to take the train and had left her car in Inverness, so she wasn't concerned about her friend at this time. It wasn't until Monday, the 15th of November 1976, when Renee failed to collect her son Gordon from school as usual, that her estranged husband became concerned about her safety. He rang Renee's sister Morag to try and find out what was happening, only to find out that Morag had no idea where Renee was and that she had never intended to visit her on the Friday. Gordon immediately knew that something was terribly wrong and so called the police. Missing person posters were circulated, and Gordon MacRae also offered a reward of £1,000, which is approximately £7,000 or $8,700 in today's money. Following a missing person inquiry, and after the car was examined and blood matching both Renee and Andrew was found, a murder inquiry was launched. It wasn't until the murder inquiry began that Valerie finally admitted to the police that Renee had actually planned to go to Rannoch that Friday night to spend the weekend with her lover Bill McDowell, who she was having an affair with, and not in fact to visit her sister Morag. This was also when Valerie told the police that Bill McDowell was Andrew's biological father, a fact that Bill McDowell himself confirmed a couple of days later. Like I said, Renee's husband Gordon had his suspicions about Andrew's parentage, but on having it confirmed, as well as on finding out that Renee had been having an affair with his company accountant, Gordon promptly sacked Bill McDowell. After opening the murder inquiry, the police searched Renee's home and found her belongings to be packed in boxes, which apparently would confirm what Renee had told Valerie about her, Bill McDowell, and the two boys planning to move away from the area pretty soon. After finding out about Renee and Bill McDowell's affair, the police admitted the case was mired with a sea of deceit and untruthfulness. In the fortnight following the disappearance, large numbers of police officers and volunteers searched moorland around the site where the car was discovered, bearing in mind though it was November in the Scottish Highlands, so this was further hindered by the excessive rain which had turned most areas to bog. Also, an RAF aircraft with a heat-seeking device made wider sweeps of the area, trying to pick up any reading that would indicate a body, while also taking aerial photographs. Renee's lover, Bill McDowell, and her estranged husband, Gordon, were interviewed, and they both had solid alibis for the evening Renee and Andrew went missing. Bill McDowell's wife, Rosemary, confirmed that Bill McDowell was with her all evening, and Bill McDowell continued to deny any involvement. He advised that he had no intention of leaving his wife and that he had grown tired of the affair. Bill McDowell also said they had changed his mind about seeing Renee in Rannoch that night, and that he felt under pressure to stay with Renee because she could reveal he was Andrew's father, which would cost him his job, which is ironic as he lost his job anyway after Renee's husband found out about the affair and that Andrew was not his son but Bill McDowell's, so that worked out well for him. And if he had cancelled his meeting with Renee like he said, then where was Renee going that night? That doesn't make sense. Bill McDowell also rubbished the idea that he was going to leave his wife and start a new life with Renee in Shetland. But again, if that was the case, did he forget to tell Renee this? As why would Renee tell Valerie about this the very day she went missing, as well as pack all her belongings if a move was not imminent? It just doesn't make sense. Also, during being questioned by investigators, Bill McDowell revealed that he thought Renee might still be alive, as after the disappearance, he received a few phone calls that rung and then hung up. Apparently, this was a secret way of himself and Renee communicating. But the police only had Bill McDowell's word about these calls, so he could have been either lying or telling the truth and the calls were just a coincidence. Although Bill McDowell remained the main suspect, he stayed tight-lipped, and with his alibi and no evidence to the contrary, the police could take no further action. Bill McDowell and his wife actually stayed together and eventually they moved to London and then Cumbria in England. Now, during the investigation in 1976, police spoke to a couple of witnesses that had been travelling on the A9 road the evening of the disappearance. One witness said they saw a man wheeling a pushchair along the A9. Another reported seeing a man dragging what he thought to be a sheep close to and towards Dalmagary Quarry, which is not far from where Renee's car was found. And Renee was reported to have been wearing a sheepskin coat the night she disappeared. The person seen dragging the sheep near the quarry was never identified. 8 months into the investigation, in May 1977, Detective Sergeant John Cathcart coordinated a search of Dalmagary Quarry, which is close to where Renee's car was found. While excavating the quarry, he was hit by a stench of decomposition after removing a layer of topsoil, and he was convinced it was a sign of corpses. He continued digging with hand tools for the rest of the day, but failed to discover the cause of the smell. He left for the day with a plan to continue digging the following morning. However, upon speaking to his superior officer about the smell of decomposition he had witnessed and his plans to continue digging the following morning, his superior officer called this operation off, advising that the bulldozer they were using had to go back to the contractors due to lack of funds, so that was the end of the dig. It wasn't until late 1977 when a different quarry came under scrutiny, Leonach Quarry, lying about 6 miles or about 9 kilometres east of Inverness. This quarry was flooded and a known fly-tipping spot for locals. Initially, Leonach Quarry was searched using an underwater camera, which intriguingly had detected what appeared to be a head wrapped in a carrier bag. This picture was released to the press in November 1977. Naval divers then searched the quarry for 2 days, but deemed the head in a bag picture to, in fact, just have been a plastic bag filled with household waste. At this point, no further searching of Leonach Quarry could be carried out using divers as it was deemed too unsafe. So that's 2 separate quarries where the searches were abandoned. Throughout the years, there has been continued interest in this case and pleas for information from the family on each anniversary, as well as reviews of the case being carried out in 1987. But it wasn't until following a Scottish televised documentary called Unsolved, Getting Away with Murder in 2004 that there was renewed interest in the case and the investigation was reopened. And in August 2004, Northern Constabulary's Chief Inspector Ian Latimer ordered a forensic search of the original quarry, Dalmagary, following a review of the case 27 years after it had initially been partially searched and abandoned due to lack of funds for the digger. This led to £122,000, or approximately $150,000, being spent on an excavation of Dalmagary Quarry in 2004. In just under a month, 20,000 tonnes of earth from the quarry was excavated and 2,000 trees were removed. However, all that was found was 2 crisp packets, men's clothing and rabbit bones, which may have proven a waste of time, but it did need to be rolled out. Following this, the case went cold again. Then over 2 years later, in October 2006, the Northern Constabulary named a suspect in a report to the Procurator Fiscal. However, the Crown Office declared there was insufficient evidence to go to court, so this unfortunately went nowhere either. This man was suspected to have been Bill McDowell. It was reported that a week after the disappearance, Bill McDowell was being interviewed at Inverness Police Headquarters when his wife, Rosemary, had demanded to see her husband, telling the police officers to leave him alone. Bill and Rosemary then left the police station without Bill saying anything further. Since this time, Bill McDowell has been reluctant to speak out about the case, but in 2004 he broke his silence, insisting that he did not kill Renee. Also around this time, Bill McDowell, who was now living in London with his wife, and who was notoriously known to have avoided the limelight regarding this case, made a statement saying, "I didn't do it. It's all starting up again, and it's a nightmare for myself and Rosemary. It keeps following us around. We can't escape it, but I didn't do it." Over the years, there has been a lot of speculation about the disappearance of Renee and Andrew MacRae, one being of a cover-up by the Northern Constabulary, mainly due to the fact that John Cathcart's search of Dalmagary Quarry was called off. But what would the police have to gain from covering up the disappearance? Another story is that apparently at the time of Andrew and Renee's disappearance, Renee's husband Gordon was having money problems. He apparently sold Renee's house in Cradle Hall Park for a profit less than a year after her disappearance, as well as supposedly collecting the insurance on Renee's burnt-out BMW. There were also rumours that Renee's husband received life insurance on Renee and Andrew. However, Renee's son Gordon spoke out saying that his father had not received a penny from Renee or Andrew's deaths. Now, Renee's husband Gordon was a very successful and influential man in the area at the time, so could the police have been covering up for him? Renee and Gordon were heading for divorce, and obviously she would be entitled to half of everything. If Gordon was having money problems, then a divorce would have been the last thing he would have needed. This is all just speculation, and Gordon is not and has not ever been a suspect in the disappearances. So where are Andrew and Renee, as well as the suitcase and Andrew's silver cross pushchair? Well, a local to the area has an idea about that. At the time of the disappearance, sections of the A9 road were undergoing upgrading, and it has been speculated that perhaps Renee and Andrew's bodies, the suitcase and Andrew's pushchair were buried under a section of this upgraded road. And so, in 2006, a local elderly farmer, Brian McGregor, who is known to be quite eccentric, commissioned a ground-penetrating radar scan which he claims discovered anomalies beneath the northbound carriageway of the A9 between Aviemore and Inverness and near the village of Moy. He has also gone so far as to mark a spot on the A9 with a yellow circle. Detective Superintendent Jim Smith from the Major Investigations Team said that he was aware of the ground-penetrating radar report and the anomalies recorded, however confirmed that at the time of the disappearance, construction was not taking place at the site of the anomalies, and it was a considerable period of time before work commenced there. Northern Constabulary have said that after studying aerial photographs taken by the RAF during the construction of the A9, they were satisfied that the bodies were not buried under the road. Brian McGregor does not agree with this. However, before Brian commissioned the ground-penetrating radar, he declared that the bodies of Renee and Andrew were buried under a track 12 feet down near Dalmagary Quarry, supposedly this being based on his divining rod skills. So you can make up your own mind about his findings. He actually demanded that the police dig up this area too, but so far the police have not deemed it necessary. Then, in 2010, the Scottish Government announced that work for an overtaking lane at the location where the ground-penetrating radar detected anomalies was to be undertaken, but it wasn't until 2016 that police advised that they would liaise with the contractors doing this work on the A9 and the local council to see if they could have a look at this area. However, planning for such an endeavour takes time, and it was only in August 2019 that a public inquiry was scheduled to see if there were any objections to this work actually going ahead. So the work to be done at the section of road of interest on the A9 is progressing very slowly, and a date for this work hasn't yet been given. So we're still no further forward in finding out if in fact the anomalies detected by the GPR are clues in relation to this case. On the 9th of October 2018, which would have been Andrew's 45th birthday, the police released a photograph of him as a baby and an image of the Silver Cross pushchair, and officers were appealing for sightings of the pram on and around Friday the 12th of November 1976. Now, just before the picture was released in October 2018, it was reported on the 2nd of October 2018 that Police Scotland divers had examined Leonach Quarry near Culloden Battlefield and about 6 miles or 9 kilometres east of Inverness using a remotely operated vehicle for about a week in relation to the case. Now, you may remember that in 1977, police initially tried to search Leonach Quarry by firstly using an underwater camera, and then naval divers had searched for 2 days, but it was deemed too dangerous to operate further. So after 42 years, the decision had finally been made for the water to be pumped out of Leonach Quarry. An estimated 3 million gallons or 13 million litres of water was pumped out by engineers over a 2-week period, and approximately 5,000 tonnes of material had to be sifted through and painstakingly searched, with Gordon, Renee's son, pleading with police in an interview in the Sun newspaper to keep going until they find something, with Gordon going on to say that he is tormented daily over the mystery disappearance of his mum and little brother, saying that it has hung over his life like a black cloud. It was revealed in June 2019 that the search had apparently revealed bones and parts of a pushchair, which were believed to be wheels similar to that of Andrew's Silver Cross pushchair. At the same time as Leonach Quarry was being pumped, Police Scotland launched Operation Abermule, where dedicated officers would go through all of the evidence that had been collected in the case. And it would appear that either something had been found during Leonach Quarry being pumped or during the review, as on the morning of Wednesday the 11th of September 2019, Bill McDowell, then 77 years old, was arrested at his home in Cumbria in England in connection with the disappearances of Renee and Andrew MacRae. Bill McDowell was driven from his home by police officers and taken to Inverness. He appeared in Inverness Sheriff Court later the same day and was charged with the murders of Renee and Andrew MacRae, as well as being charged for attempting to pervert the course of justice. Bill McDowell made no plea and he was bailed, and he would appear in court at a later date. So, what had happened? What had the police found that led them to arrest Bill McDowell after 43 years? Were the bones that had been found in fact that of either Renee or Andrew? Well, you'll have to wait until next Tuesday for the second part of the Renee and Andrew MacRae episode, where this question will be answered, and I'll go through all the evidence and witness statements that were presented at Bill McDowell's murder trial. You're not going to want to miss it, but I'm going to leave you with a promo for the PNW Haunts and Homicide podcast.
Hey, creepy people!
This is PNW Haunts and Homicides. I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Cassie.
Together, we explore stories of the paranormal and true crime throughout the Pacific Northwest. For each episode, we do a tarot reading to help us gain some insight on the topic as we share the facts of the case and our interpretations. You can find our episodes featuring true stories from infamous cases such as the misdeeds of Boeing, as well as lesser-known true crime cases like the murders in Tunnel 13.
As well as our spooky stories from Pike Place and Ravens Manor on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you'd like to listen. Have a creepy-ass day!
Scottish Murders is a production of Clurin Ton.